Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. And today we're talking about this beauty right here, which is the Advanced Weapon Light System from HRT Tactical. You guys have seen many things from HRT on the channel here before, and this thing is built from the ground up as a dedicated weapon light, and in my opinion, it addresses some of my gripes about dedicated weapon lights as far as the broader market is concerned. So what you'll see here on the sidebar are the specs that I'm not going to dig super high into, so if you want to nerd all over the place, then go ahead and consult those. Now the first thing that you will notice on this thing is that it is a what they're calling mono body design. So this section right here is one solid piece. It is not a body with a mount somehow attached to it, either a clamp mount or some kind of tapped mount with some screws in it or anything like that. No, this is a solid one-piece machined body. The light itself comes in two variants. This one is the full-sized one, and they make a smaller one. I went with the full-size one, and we'll get to the reason why I went with the full-size one in a little bit. Now, the other thing that I really like about this is that they didn't go with some kind of janky switch. Those are, in my opinion, a serial weak point. For instance, on my integrated illuminator and laser for like night vision use, it has a switch. I took it off immediately. I just used the baked-in buttons because every single time I put one of those switches on something, that's where the thing breaks. So what they've done for their switch is actually two things, and I'll take it apart first to show you how it works. This is the switch module, but underneath of that is your standard kind of on-off button, and of course it is momentary as well, right? But this omnidirectional switch that they have here in the back is pretty slick. So it screws in. You can see that it's kind of like a bobble switch, right? And it's knurled for grip and all that sort of stuff. But if we screw this in here, then no matter how I push this, whether it's forward or down or right or however this works, I can activate that. So it doesn't matter the orientation of the light. I can also push it in to get a constant on. Now, one of the things that they have considered when it comes to weapon lights is sometimes they will rattle apart. So not only for waterproofing, but if you were to take each of these junctions apart, you will find an O-ring that puts some pressure on those threads, keeps the thing from rattling apart. So you don't have to Loctite the thing together to keep it from rattling apart, which is another problem with most weapon lights. And you want them to have those junctions, so if you break something, like if I bend this up or shatter that glass, then I can replace it relatively easily. I don't want to have to buy a whole new one. So it's important that those junctions exist, but they've made sure that they don't rattle apart. The other thing that they've done with those junctions that I think is very forward thinking is there's a propensity when you've got something like this stacked on the side of your gun for it to ND, and maybe even continuously ND. So if I've got it mounted to a gun and I've got it stacked against something, then all it takes is that to activate it. And it'll sit there and burn the battery down, and these things get pretty hot because they're high output lights. Well, what they've done is they've baked in the ability, so if I just bring this 3/4 of a turn out of battery, then I can no longer activate the light. Now, in my opinion, this is a little bit rattly for that, and I guess that's part of the idea is you will see that that is loose, and then you'll be able to tighten it back up if you weren't the person. Maybe you work at an agency or something like that who pack the guns for transit or whatever. But what I find a little bit more applicable is if we just rotate this about a 1/4 turn out, you can see that that isn't rattly or anything like that. And even if I click the button on, the thing won't work. But if I put it back in, then it works totally fine. So 6 of one, half dozen of another as far as that control is concerned. And then the last thing that I really wanted to cover on the operation, and I apologize at this point in time because I have somehow lost these inserts. Hopefully HRT will send me out a couple so I can demonstrate them in B-roll. But there is a sensitivity ring in here, and this comes with the neutral ring. You basically take that ring out and you can either make it more or less sensitive based on the size of that ring. So If you wanted to swap that out, the increased sensitivity has a plus and the negative sensitivity has a negative sign on it. Let's go ahead and mount this thing up and let's take it to the dark. And good evening, my folks. Normally when I'm out here, I am filming with my night vision camera, but because we're doing white light tonight, we don't need that one. So it's actually kind of weird to be out here in the pitch black without a whole bunch of crap on top of my head. It's actually kind of refreshing. All right, so this target right here is about 50 yards away. Okay, we'll let the smoke clear a little bit. And we have a target down there at about 100 yards. Okay, let that smoke clear a little bit more. And then we're going to switch over to here. We have a target also at about 100 yards. And it's a little bit smaller. The smoke is rather intrusive. Got it. Cool. Let's talk spatial organization here for a second. Two things. First, this is the long variant. I've mentioned that probably previously in the video, but the reason that is important in this particular instance is that we have a can on the end of the gun. Suppressor shadow is less of a thing if you just have a muzzle brake or a flash hider or something like that on the end of the gun. But if you have a suppressor on the end of the gun, then you want a longer light. You want it to stick farther forward because, one, you're not really worried about it getting dusted up near as much, and you're wanting to mitigate that suppressor shadow. Regardless of how you set it up, unless you got a flashlight that comes all the way out here to the end, you're going to have some suppressor shadow artifact in your beam. But the more distance you can close between here and the end of the suppressor, the less that is going to be a factor. So that's one of the reasons the large variant is on this one. The second thing I want to remark on is look at how low profile that is. And I don't actually think that you can get much more low profile than we currently have it, or you wouldn't be able to run a suppressor at all. Obviously, this is also a role when we have a muzzle brake on there because there's a problem with the vents beating up the light. It's going to soot it up a whole lot. But then on top of that, when we're talking about suppressors, this is a giant heat sink. And we don't really want to get that any closer than it currently is because then we would be touching the suppressor, and that's bad. Direct conductance of heat would be bad. But I think that we have an appropriate space here so that it can vent a little bit and we don't get one-to-one transfer of any heat that's coming off the suppressor onto the flashlight. So I think that HRT did a really good job of paying attention to those kinds of attentions to detail. Speaking of that beam, here we have that same firearm light suppressor combo, and you can see this is what you can expect out of that kind of suppressor class as far as the size is concerned. And this is it in comparison with just a dead air flash hider. As far as the beam characteristics themselves are concerned, I'm not a super duper flashlight nerd, so I might get these wrong. And quite frankly, I don't care. But you can see that there's a fair amount of spill on this particular beam, and I think that's good for creating a field of view. But then in the center, we have a nice bright hot spot, as well as what I'm going to say a secondary ring that illuminates a decent quantity of the target area, in addition to just the bloom that we get from the main spill of the light. And let's talk power plant. So this is an 18650, comes with one of them. They do sell a 2-pack of them, and it comes obviously with its charging cable, and the 2-pack comes with a dual charging cable, simple USB. If you don't want to use the rechargeables, then it will run on CR123s, and the charging port is actually located up here towards the front, towards the what would be the positive terminal. And when it is not charged, it glows red. When it is fully charged, it glows blue. And onto critiques. I really like what they've done as far as the capabilities of the flashlight are concerned. They've balanced the indoor and outdoor applications for the light by making it not so excessively bright outdoors that you can't use it indoors type thing, but it's not so dim for indoor activities that you can't use it to shoot to a respectable distance outdoors. So good job. But the one thing that I would say about the sensitivity adjustment, I have two end caps here. One of these, this one has got the less pressure required, and then this one's got the maximum in there. And as far as these two things are concerned, to be completely honest, I don't feel a whole lot of difference. So I know that that's one of the features that they put in their list of things. It's not like the hallmark feature or anything like that, but I would like to see the capacity to make this very difficult to activate, as in I have to consciously push on it to be able to get it to activate. And I just don't see that capability as far as the pressure is concerned. I went and measured them, and they're all within a couple ounces of each other, and I would like to see that be considerably more or less by putting the inserts in. I don't see a whole lot of value in switching out those little inserts, but I guess a whole bunch of gear nerds might be all about that, and if you're one of those flashlight people, then maybe you can tell me that I'm wrong in the comment section down below. But other than that, if you're looking for a new weapon light, HRT Advanced Weapon Light System. It looks like it's fitting the bill as far as a ready-to-go, out-of-the-box, dedicated weapon light. So special thanks to HRT for sending this thing out for testing. Had a great time doing it, and hopefully we'll see you on another video here at VSO Gun Channel.